We can
Okay.
look each other lovingly in our eyes. I'm with Representative Greg Casar. He is from the great state of Texas, representing the 35th District, the city of Austin. He was recently elected chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. I only have him for 20 minutes, and I told him I think fast, I talk fast, I'm going to ask a lot of questions. And on the left hook, we keep it real. I give credit where credit's due, but I criticize when we're meant to criticize. First question I have is we just saw the spectacle, if you will, the political rally where Donald Trump used and abused Charlie Kirk's murder to essentially engage in grievance. I think we all agree that the murder of Charlie Kirk was horrendous. We all condemn it. I have thankfully not seen a single Democratic leader in any way, shape, or form mark or ridicule the murder. However, Charlie Kirk, sir, in his life, with his own words, with his own actions, spread a lot of hate. He said black people were better off during segregation. He has mocked and ridiculed black women. He said MLK was horrible and awful. He was against the Civil Rights Act. He called George Floyd a scumbag, and on and on and on and on. I say all this because even though we all condemn his murder, as we should, maybe we shouldn't, valorize him, praise him, sanitize him, and whitewash him, especially, when your base, the Democratic base, is filled with literally the people that he spent his life mocking and ridiculing. I say all this because the House adopted a resolution honoring the life and legacy of Charlie Kirk in condemning political violence. 95 Democrats supported that resolution. Representative Casar, to all the Democrats, the progressives who are immigrants, transgender, women, Muslims, black people, that was a slap in the face. Your response?
So we want to keep it real here. So I'll keep it real with you. And keeping it real, not a single one of the, so I did not vote yes, but not a single one of the people who voted yes because they were honoring what Charlie Kirk did or said, because the resolution, and this is a terrible thing that happens in Congress, the resolution has a name, but it did two things. One, it said things about Charlie Kirk, and then two, it condemned political violence. It set a trap for House Democrats. And we can't go get set in the traps that are set by Mike Johnson. I have plenty of critiques for the Democratic establishment, but my push for our progressive followers and progressives watching here is to not get all wrapped up in the traps the Republicans set. It's time for us to talk about how the First Amendment is under assault in this country. We should be talking about how border czar Tom Homan just got caught. MSNBC just reported taking $50,000 in bribes to steer contracts to people to rip our families apart, to send people to detention centers. So look, yes, there were folks that said, I'm voting no because I despise what Charlie Kirk said. There are people who are voting yes, who are saying, I want to support the part that says, I don't support political violence. But should we get stuck in the trap of talking about a trap vote that the Republicans set up, or should we start this week off talking about saving our healthcare, saving the First Amendment, and transforming the Democratic Party into an actually pro-worker, anti-billionaire party? And that's what we'll be working on here today.
I think both, to answer your question. And the reason why both is because both are connected, because they voluntarily fell into a trap that even a child could see. It's like Bugs Bunny falling into Elmer Fudd's trap. And the rest of us are saying these are bad faith actors. We have 10 years of it. Donald Trump literally yesterday goes against Erica Kirk, who had a beautiful message of love and peace and said, I hate my opponents, right? And we literally saw the DOJ openly scrub the 2024 study that shows that the number one act of domestic terrorism, the number one culprit is right-wing extremism. So why, oh why, did then these Democrats go along and fall in for the trap, which then for the rest of us says that these Democrats are not built for this moment. They're not made for this fight. And I appreciate you and so many others who did not vote for this. But then I now, as a person who's looking at what I consider an authoritarian regime, Donald Trump using and abusing his powers to cancel Jimmy Kimmel, Donald Trump using and abusing the DOJ, like you said, to forgive Tom Homan for literally be caught in an FBI sting carrying money, right? They're playing you. They are playing you. So if they're playing you and you are being played, then what confidence does that give me that this Democratic Party can take on this authoritarian regime? Representative.
Right. I think the question is, do you see all of the members and look for the members that are writing and signing on to the bills to start having there be criminal consequences for this kind of censorship by the Trump regime. Many of those 95 actually are working with the Progressive Caucus on that. The question is, are members showing up at these ICE detention centers and demanding entry and willing to push the line and be part of lawsuits to get people out of those detention centers? That's the question we should be asking ourselves, because my challenge to you, and I challenge my progressive friends, just like I challenge my modern and centrist friends, is we should not. I don't think you should. I don't think the folks following should respectfully also fall into the Republicans' trap by spending all of our time talking about this Charlie Kirk resolution vote when our families are being split up, when 17 million people are about to lose their Medicaid, when 20 million Americans are about to see their healthcare costs double if these Obamacare subsidies aren't pushed through. Let's focus on the tens of millions of Americans who are being hurt, and let's not, I urge my centrist colleagues not to, but also our progressive movement not to get into these traps. We should, of course, have internal debates when it is a substantive debate. But we need to move past, I think, last week and start focusing on the attacks on free speech, the attacks on healthcare, and what the oligarchs are trying to do to our country.
So what I will say in the pushback to that is the reason why I think it's important for those who want the Democratic Party to be better. The reason for us to speak out is because if we don't speak out, this Democratic Party will not actually push for reformation on immigration, to speak out for pro-Palestinian activists, to speak out for the homeless, right? Instead, they will go with the status quo. And the reason why I think it's important for Democrats to speak up and put pressure on the centrists and the moderates and other Democrats, as you have seen, and I want to applaud you for this. Now, I said I'd be fair, is that because of Democrats speaking out for the first time in history, we had, in my lifetime, I was amazed to see 27 Democrats, including Bernie Sanders, actually vote to stop sending arms to Israel. They're finally reading the tea leaves. They're finally listening to their base. And now you just passed, thanks to the progressives, Block the Bombs Act. Can you please tell us about Block the Bombs Act? And have you been able to finally bring over your centrist colleagues into finally admitting that what Israel is doing is a genocide?
Well, I'll start off just by saying I am so just appreciative of the people on the ground who are pushing the Democratic Party to not be just progressive on typical issues, but be progressive on issues in Gaza and for the Palestinian people. This genocide has to stop. And I know how horrific it is that people are getting killed and people are still out there marching and writing letters. I know it can sometimes feel helpless, but it is making a difference. And one example of this is how the Congressional Progressive Caucus just voted in overwhelming numbers, not just a little majority, overwhelming numbers to endorse the Block the Bombs Act, which would prohibit the U.S. transfer of some of the worst offender weapons that the Netanyahu government has used to kill innocent people in Gaza. This is the first time the Progressive Caucus has taken action like this. We don't know of any other time a major caucus has ever endorsed a bill to stop sending weapons to the Israeli government. That was overwhelming on the part of our caucus. And the fact that the majority of the Democrats in the Senate took a similar vote, even though it wasn't enough to make it law, shows a big transformation in the Democratic Party. And I think that's what is critical, because it's very hard to change the behavior of the Trump Republican Party. They just answer to Donald Trump. But we need a better Democratic Party so that if we're ever in government again, and I hope we are, we do not perpetrate the kinds of complicity and crimes that we have seen in Gaza.
I believe Israel is now a litmus test for Democrats. I saw that even with the election. You saw the YouGov poll. I'm sure you've seen the Pew polls. You've seen the Gallup polls, the CNN polls. The overwhelming majority of Democrats want to end the occupation and the genocide. They do not want Democrats to take money from AIPAC. They see Benjamin Netanyahu as a war criminal. They use the words genocide, and yet the Democratic leadership still does not call it a genocide. The Democratic leadership, especially Senator Schumer, 2 months ago, took a photo with war criminal Benjamin Netanyahu in July, and they refused to endorse Mamdani. And the reason, going back full circle, why I bring Charlie Kirk is you had more of these Democrats, including Hakeem Jeffries, who voted for that, who are more praiseworthy of Charlie Kirk than they have been of Mamdani. And so for the rest of us, we're looking at the leadership, not you, a representative, and not these progressives, and not these others who voted, and I think voted with their conscience and met the base where they are. But we're seeing the leadership now not call it a genocide, still take money from AIPAC, and not endorse Mamdani. Your message to the leadership.
Look, I'll let the leadership largely speak for themselves, but I've heard that Leader Jeffries, one, did very clearly state how abhorrent many of the things that Charlie Kirk espoused are. And I appreciated that statement. So we should give credit where credit is due, and has said that we should keep ourselves posted on what he decides to do in the New York mayor's race. What I have done is endorsed Mr. Mamdani. I have spent time with him, and I think we have a lot to learn from his campaign. I think when we've talked about how do we excite young people, how do we make sure people that feel excluded from the political process feel included? How do we create a new kind of Democratic Party? He's done it. You could see that happening in New York City right now. And the fact that he could go into a room and say, I want to make buses, and people will say fast and free, and responds to him that way. We need a new kind of Democratic Party that has simple messages where folks understand how their daily lives will be improved. And that's why I've endorsed Mr. Mamdani, and I'm letting everybody make their own choice on that. But I think that it's a great choice to endorse him.
You obviously can only speak for yourself. Your message to those who are on the fence within your party when it comes to endorsing Mamdani, or for when it comes to calling out a genocide in Israel like you have. I agree with you. So do the international scholars of genocide, Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, Doctors Without Borders. It's clear to anyone who has eyes and ears. Your message to them to persuade them, hey, it's time to endorse Mamdani and it's time to call out this genocide.
Look, I was really moved when Jeremy Ben-Ami, who leads J Street, an organization that represents, of course, thousands of liberal and progressive Jewish Americans, talked about how challenging this has been for his organization. And I think we should lead with some empathy here. When, of course, as we know, the Jewish people have been subjected to the worst genocide known in history, millions and millions of Jewish people and others murdered.
Yeah.
And the fact that he recognized that the International Criminal Court would find this a genocide. 86% of genocide scholars saying that they know that this is a genocide. And what I hope is that with that, if we have that kind of recognition that this is where we are, then I think it is time to act like it's one. But then when there are people who are ready to say, let's not send more bombs to this agent of genocide, but there are some folks that may not want to say the word, but similarly want to be on part of the team to say, let's stop being complicit in it. I want them in the tent as well, because we need a big, broad-based coalition. So, of course, I have my position, but I also want others that say they want this killing and starvation to end to be able to join the coalition, even if maybe the history and the weight of what they have experienced makes it hard for them to say that word, even though I'm very clear alongside the 86% of genocide scholars of what history is going to judge this as.
Representative Casar, I actually had Ro Khanna here, and he went back and forth on me. He says, hey, man, I agree with you, but I haven't called it a genocide. What does it matter? And I made the case why I think words matter, and it's time for him to call it. I also had Jeremy Ben-Ami, like you mentioned, the president of J Street, and 3 days afterwards, after I gently pushed him, he came out and he said, you know what? I get it. I won't call it genocide, but I understand why other people do, which is why I think gently pushing folks to be on the right side of history, including Democratic leaders, will help Democrats actually regain so many of the people they've lost. As you know, Democrats right now, the brand is toxic. You have the lowest favorability rating since 1994, even with Donald Trump being so historically underwater. So I want to help you guys, but help me help you. I said that Israel-Palestine is the one litmus test. The other litmus test that I believe is very clear is corporate money and the broligarchy. Who will call out the broligarchy? Who will stop taking money from corporate America? Who will make a message of affordability? Now, you know this. People who voted for Trump also voted for AOC. People who voted for Trump are now voting for Mamdani. People who voted for Trump are also voting for Bernie Sanders. They have no fidelity to Democratic Socialist, Democrat Conservative. They don't care about these things, especially Latinos. They're like, just make my life better. And Donald Trump has lost all those Latino voters. That number has gone back to 2016. It seems clear to me, Representative, that whoever says, I'm willing to fight for the majority against the 1%, the workers against the elite, if I'm willing to fight the oligarchy and the oligarchy, that is the winning message that unites a majority of people and inspires the base and independents and Republicans and a lot of people who've never voted before. What will it take for the Democratic leadership to finally say, this is the message that can actually help us win?
The Democratic Party is starting to get pushed towards being transformed. And that is thanks to so many people pushing on the Democratic Party to be a winning, truth-telling, pro-worker party. Again, I've never taken a dime of corporate PAC money, and it's because it's so important to show people you're going to stand with workers against big corporate interests. When, I saw that the Democratic Party needed to change when right after we lost this last election, I sat with many people that I admire and appreciate in the Democratic Party, but some of them said, let's not go up against Elon Musk. Let's not call him out. He has too much power and too much money. And we said, hogwash. We need to go against him, not because of the bad things he does, and we can use the fact that he has so much money against Elon Musk. So we made firing Elon Musk a central rallying cry of the progressive movement. And what it did was it helped us win a critical Wisconsin Supreme Court election where Elon Musk spent historic amounts of money. But the fact that he was spending so much money helped us win that election by a historic amount of votes. And so that has started to get people, I think, with the program that going against their big money is what can help us win the voters, get us uninvited from some fancy dinners, but help us win the election. And the Progressive Caucus is committed to building a slate of pro-worker, anti-billionaire bills and laws to help us campaign on in the next November election. The kinds of things that we frankly should have been campaigning on for multiple cycles now. Hopefully now that we are in this minority, we have a chance to start over from scratch and truly make ourselves a pro-worker, anti-billionaire party.
And in addition to pro-worker and anti-billionaire, I want the Democrats to be pro-immigrant because Donald Trump has overreached so egregiously on the anti-immigrant hate, on the crackdown on brown and black skulls with ICE, that immigrants are great again in America. According to the Gallup polls, it's the largest, most favorable numbers for immigrants. However, historically, Democrats have gone Republican light when it comes to immigration reform. You saw the Lake and Riley Act that would not have passed without Democratic votes. We're seeing now an opening for Democrats to be like, give us something on immigration, something humane, but something also that takes our concerns with security. What should be the new proactive message on immigrants that isn't Republican light that Democrats need to advocate?
We can't win on Republican light. We need to go on offense. We need to go on offense on immigration by talking about, for example, the 10-year-old U.S. citizen child who was deported here out of my home state of Texas, who we haven't been able to bring back. She is recovering from brain cancer, and the Trump administration won't bring a U.S. citizen back. We've got to make sure that we go on offense and don't let Trump lie about immigration anymore. We need a bold platform that allows people to come here in a legal, orderly, and safe way. We need the people that have been here working in my community, millions of folks, to be able to be citizens as I think they actually really are citizens. It's just our government has refused to recognize their citizenship. And then I'll add one last thing, which connects back to our anti-big money agenda. You see, Donald Trump recognized rightly that everybody's being screwed over by a corrupt government, a corrupted economy in this country. And he told a full story about who the villains are. He did a populism that punched down. Donald Trump said, your rent is going up, and it's because of a Venezuelan asylum seeker. Or your healthcare is getting worse, but he said it's because of trans youth. The Democratic Party needs to be able to say your rent is going up, not because of a Venezuelan family, but because of a Wall Street hedge fund that is buying up houses in your neighborhood and donating to the political class. Your healthcare is getting worse, not because of a woke doctor or a woke coach or trans youth. Your healthcare is getting worse because of corporate greed and a healthcare CEO who's profiting off of it. If we are willing to go on offense on the economy, and on a corruption in our government, that is one of the best pro-immigrant, immigrant defense policies we can have, because we need to show working people who the real villains in the system are. Essentially what I'm advocating for is a populism that punches up instead of Trump's populism that punches down.
It's an easy winning strategy, an economic populist message that takes on the oligarchy, that identifies the good guy and the bad guy and the struggles, and he can unite a whole bunch of people, which is exactly what Mamdani and others are doing, which is why I think he'll be the next mayor. I just wish the Democratic leadership would take that message and win elections. I want to let you go. I promise I'll keep you only 20. So here's a final question. What seems crazy and untenable isn't until you actually advocate for it and actually spread the message. For example, hey, Israel's committing a genocide. We should stop spending at arms. It was untenable 2 years ago. And now, like you said, you got all these progressives and a majority of Democratic senators. Take on the oligarchy, tax the rich, Medicare for all, fighting wage, marriage equality. All seemed crazy, crazy ideas that centrists said, no, no, no. I want to ask you about this. ICE was created after 9/11. ICE is now being used to literally mock and ridicule and terrorize Black and brown people, masked armed ICE agents that, thanks to the big, beautiful bill, now have a record budget, a budget that's bigger than most countries spend on their militaries. And these people now have been given the green light by the Supreme Court to racially profile. Isn't it time for Democrats to say abolish ICE? Why won't more progressives and Democrats say abolish ICE? Isn't this a time, Representative?
Look, we had this conversation back in 2016 about a much, much smaller agency. I think that we are going to have to take a really strong look at drastically reforming what it is that Trump has given to us here, which is just a rogue agency with way too much of a budget and frankly, they're not following basic constitutional rights and basic constitutional order. What I will tell you is that I think that we should be looking at the big private industries and interests that are gumming up all of this cash, from the private prison industry, the private detention centers. Who is it that Tom Homan was saying he was going to steer contracts to, and take, he got caught taking $50,000 in cash on this. I think we should be talking about these issues in a way that makes sense to an everyday working person, fully restoring your constitutional rights, looking at the bloat that Donald Trump has pumped into agencies like ICE. But I think our first order of business, beyond just restoring, of course, the basic rights under the Constitution, is making sure that we increase the wages and decrease prices for hundreds of millions of Americans. I think that has to be first order of business for us to win these upcoming elections, rather than falling into some of the rhetorical traps that the Republicans have used to exploit and batter progressives. And so I think that's why we should have a different sort of language over strict ICE accountability, rather than getting caught in sort of the same rhetorical traps they set before. Let's work on the kinds of issues that can win us the election and win over hundreds of millions of everyday Americans.
Representative, I'm going to state on my word. You said you had 20 minutes. I kept you 2 minutes extra. I hope you can come back. Before I let you go, shamelessly promote yourself. How can people find you? How can people support you? How can people send you their thoughts and prayers, comments, and concerns?
Really grateful to everybody here for watching. Really grateful for the important and tough back and forth. That's what we need in real independent journalism. Try to keep it real with y'all. You can always find me at Rep Casar for my official side communications, at Greg Casar for my campaign side social media. Thank you guys for plugging in.
And this is Greg Casar, recently elected chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. Also, check out Block the Bombs Act for the people who joined us late. I'll have this conversation up on Substack and YouTube. This has been The Left Hook. No paywalls. I'm a terrible capitalist. Everything is for free. And hopefully, Representative, you could tell your colleagues to come talk to me. See, it wasn't that bad, was it? Pretty painless.
No, I had a great time. Thank you guys so much.
Take care, everyone.